Hello again. For those who are members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, hopefully you had a wonderful conference weekend. For everybody else, hopefully you just had a wonderful, relaxing weekend. We spent hours with some friends. We helped get some wood chips for them and came home with some more gravel and spent some time doing manual labor. Then we spent some time playing games and watching conference. So it was a great weekend. Today's footage is working on some speaker cables for the new DJ system we're building and working on setting up the mirror ball tree, which is something I've actually been kicking around in my head for quite literally decades. We'll get to that and the challenges that mirror balls kind of present, but I think they are worth the effort that is involved. So as far as the speaker cables, this is something that is kind of I guess you could say it's near and dear to my heart. It's something I actually enjoy doing, and I enjoy the end product and being able to control what I have, what connectors I have, how long they are, how thick they are, the quality of the cable, all of that. But the best part about it is the amount of savings that I get for just a few minutes of time. I remember when I first started DJing, we bought some speaker cable, we bought some amplifier, a pair of speakers, and a mixer. And at the time I was 19, I think. It was a stupid decision because we went and got a credit card with Radio Shack of all places and bought everything from Radio Shack, and we started goofing off and DJing. It was me and the roommate that I had at the time, and while that opened up a whole world of options and possibilities, and I have met numerous people over the years because of it. I've done all kinds of different stuff. I've had some embarrassing times where I run into a cousin at a dance that I was DJing, and while talking to my cousin, I thought he had a date. I totally did not recognize the girl that he was with. And I asked him if this was his date, and he looked at me in shock. And he said, no, this is so-and-so, and told me her name. And I said, oh, okay, hi, so-and-so. And he said, this is so-and-so, my sister? Yeah. It had been a long time. She'd grown up a lot. It was dark, it was noisy, and I completely admit I did not recognize her at all. We all laughed about that quite a bit. Mostly them laughing at me in embarrassment. But, yeah, back to the speaker cables. The first time we bought some, we just bought them because it was kind of sort of a package deal, essentially, and they weren't long enough. They didn't, they weren't really that great quality because they were the Radio Shack Gemini brand, and it wasn't a horrible system. It was definitely not the best. When we got around to wanting to upgrade, I had a different DJ partner at the time, and he liked the idea of building his own boxes, and so I started researching that and kind of figured out that it's not really that hard. It's just, construction. Some glue, some screws, some cutting. There is a lot of math that goes into it, but in trying to research and figure out what the best brand of speaker was, at the time, you essentially had two real options and a few acceptable options. If you wanted the best sounding speakers at the time, then JBL was the way to go. If you wanted the loudest speakers, then PV was the way to go. They were not comparable at all. We went to every musical equipment store that we could and tested every speaker that they had available. And without fail, the loudest speakers, using the same sound source, the same controller, the same amplifier, the loudest speakers were always the EVs, and they sounded like garbage. The best sounding were the JBLs, but they weren't the loudest. They were close, I don't know, they somewhere in the third or fourth loudest, so they weren't bad by any means. But we started just doing more and more research, and we came across a brand called Eminence, and they don't actually sell full speakers, but they've been around for a long time, and they build speaker hardware and cones and crossovers and all the different components that go into building a speaker box. And we started checking them out more and more, and we found a place in Salt Lake City that sold them, and we actually were able to compare a JBL and a PV and a box that had Eminence components in it. And the Eminence components sounded as good or better than the JBL. And I say or better because every speaker is a little bit different, and some sound better with country, some sound better with rap, some sound better with techno, some sound better with synth, so there is some subjectability there. But they sounded definitely as good as the JBLs, and they were as loud as the PVs, which blew my mind. So we said, hey, let's try and build a pair. So we built a set of speakers, and we compared them to our Gemini, and there was no comparison. Admittedly, they were a lot louder, largely because the Geminis were like 100 watts per speaker, and the Eminence were, I think, 250 watts per speaker. So that was a big difference right there. Obviously, they're going to be a lot louder, but they sounded so much better. So we built more, and ever since then, that is all I've ever built, is Eminence speakers, and built my own boxes. And that leads into that, if I'm going to put this much effort into it, I can build cables pretty affordably as well. The advantage of building my own speaker boxes is that I can build a better sounding, louder speaker. Like compared to the JBL, I could actually build about 2.5 speakers for the same cost as buying one JBL. And for the EVs, it was about 3 speakers for the cost of one. Because for some reason, PV. For some reason, the PV speakers were more expensive than the JBLs, which I never understood that. But to each their own. Some people love them because loudness and decibels is all they're actually after. So we started doing that, and I've just always done it ever since. It's a similar comparison. I haven't priced speaker cable in over 20 years, so I thought, for the purposes of this, I might as well try. And the company that I've been using to buy most of my lighting and sound equipment right now is Sweetwater, and I gotta admit, I didn't use them for a long time because when I first heard about them, 15 or 20 years ago, I kind of thought it was a joke. I don't know why. but I just never trusted them. And so I gave them a chance, and they were awesome. Their customer service was amazing. Their sales team was amazing. I've now had to use their support team, which they have been awesome. I got some lighting stands that were missing a component, so they've been amazing. Everything about them has just been phenomenal. Their prices have been on par with anybody else. I have no reason to doubt and question them. So if you're in the market for something like that, they're a great company. It's not sponsored or anything, but they do give you a free little bag of candy with every box that they package, which was a fun little surprise. I'm sure my hips don't agree, but yeah, they've been awesome. And so I went ahead and checked the pricing on their website, and for a 25-foot 4-conductor speaker cable, which is all I ever use because I don't have to want to worry about which cable I need to get. So I use a 4-conductor cable so that I can run the sub signals on one side of the cable and the full range signals on the other side of the cable. And then all of the receptors are capable of just passing through whatever signal the speaker isn't using. So I just can daisy chain the entire system and makes setup super, super simple. Let me pause that for a second. So what I'm trying to do at the moment is get an idea of, I need to build a case or a coffin to store the components for the DMX Wi-Fi transmitters, the USB hub, the MIDI controllers for the lighting and the sound, things like that. And so I was trying to figure out placement and the size of the box, and then marking things on the cardboard so that I can then later go back and use that as a template to build the box. So now I'm going to actually get around to setting things up, and Emily's going to start playing with the lighting program while I do that. But yeah, so the 25-foot cable is $130 on their website, and I bought 250 foot of cable for $200 and 8 connectors, so enough to make 4 cables, cost me $40, and then a couple bucks in solder because I like to tin all of my connections, and less than an hour of time, and I have 4 cables. Now, that actually was enough to build 8 cables, but I just didn't have the connectors, so if you add another $40, we're looking at $280 basically, and that builds 8 cables versus one 25-foot cable. Mine are 31 feet long versus 25 feet long. So there's not a real comparison. It's totally worth building these yourself. In all fairness, though, I had the thought, well, that's awfully pricey for a cable, so let me double check here. What gauge is this? And the cable that they are selling for $130 is in fact an 11 gauge cable. The cables that I built were 14 gauge cables. So there's a huge difference in price there. To be more comparable, I went ahead and priced things out, and if I built the same cables with a 12 gauge cable, because I couldn't find anybody who actually sells an 11 gauge 4-conductor cable, that cable price does a little bit more than double. It goes from $200 for 250 feet to $520 for 250 feet. So the same 8 cables would then cost me $600, but that's still that would be a very comparable cable, and that's still the same 8 cables is what, $920 if I bought them pre-built, and they would still be 25 feet instead of 31 feet. So that's why why I've always built my own cables and speakers. Now, what Emily's doing while I'm kind of running around like a chicken with my head cut off at the moment is I'm trying to find the T-bar. At this point in time, I have two sets of lighting truss that have a 10-foot truss span between two trees, and then each tree has a light T-bar across the top. And I have an extra light T-bar. I was planning to build everything onto the extra light T-bar so that I can move that separately from the two truss systems. But I couldn't find the T-bar, so we're now trying to find that T-bar, and Emily is now helping search places to see if I somehow missed it. And I'm just going to set everything up on one of the light trusses T-bars. And that right there, that little blackout, that's what happens when you forget to actually plug in the computer's power supply and the computer battery dies. Stops sending signals to the lighting. Yeah, so I did eventually figure out what happened. We're planning to use some pipe in between the T-bars to hang curtains from for the wedding. This is what we're preparing everything for, is for my daughter's wedding. And then just, to start DJing again as a side business, since that's something I've absolutely loved doing since I was 18. So for almost 30 years, wow, that's been a long time. What I've got at the moment that I'm taking apart over here is some existing light trees that I've been using, and they had two moving heads, American DJ Z4s, and then two color rails, Chauvet color rail IRCs, which were fun bar wash light type things, and I would shine them up at the ceiling. And they were good lights for a long time. One of them has died. I think it just might have a short, so I'll probably crack it open and see if I can maybe see if a solder connection's come undone, if a wire has somehow come loose. I don't know, but for now I'm just going forward with using them as uplighting in my uplighting system, and we'll just see where they end up. But the desire has always been to have a moving head that can double as what I want for the mirror ball. And I've tried quite a few different lights over the years for mirror balls, and I want everything to be color controllable. I love the ability to mix colors and to chase colors and change things and have the room just washed in whatever colors I want. I've tried a couple of small, color changing RGB pin spots, and they've never really been bright enough for a mirror ball. Even the ones that were advertised as being for mirror balls were just never bright enough. So the hope was that these Z4s, which aren't the brightest, moving heads in the world, they have a big flaw, in my opinion, and that's that they tried to make them have an additional feature. So there's 4 10-watt LEDs inside there, and they're connected in alternating pairs, so the opposing corners are matched together, and you can control the RGBW signal from each one or each pair individually, which sounds cool when you think about it, but in all practicality, once you're shooting that across a room, by the time it hits the other wall, they've blended so much that you can barely tell a difference between one pair and the other pair. So I've just programmed my buttons in the lighting program as just one button controls both channels. it doesn't. It's not a big enough selling point that I would ever buy them again. But at the time, I got a good deal on them, and they've been good lights. I mean, I've loved having them. But their cousin, I guess, it's called a eliminator. Wow, I just forgot the name of it. Anyway, it has 7 11-watt LEDs instead of 4 10-watt LEDs, so it's double the brightness. And it still has a zoom feature, it still has the full range of moving head motion, but it doesn't have the ability to control individual pixels, which isn't something I generally want anyway. I want the light to be a certain way. So it is what it is. Different desires for different people, to each their own. I was trying to give one more attempt to try and find that T-bar. So I apologize, I got sidetracked. So as I was trying to find the pipe for that would fit over those T-bars to allow us to create that curtain rod, I took that T-bar to Home Depot with me and found what I needed. And then apparently when I loaded the pipe into the truck, it would appear that I left the T-bar on the cart at Home Depot, because that's the last time I remember seeing it, and we have searched the truck numerous times now and have not found it. So we're going to have to figure a different option out. I'm trying to see if I can find a replacement T-bar from the manufacturer. Hopefully I can get that solved, but we ended up actually just picking up a new light tree. So I guess if we can get the T-bar from the manufacturer, then great. We'll have 2 trees we can position around the room with different lights. If not, then we at least have the one, and I can figure something else out to do with the other. So you can see here, my desire is that I can have these moving heads extremely close to the mirror ball, because the closer they are to it, the brighter the beams will be on the walls, because then basically the closer to the wall they actually are. And I wanted to have 4 of them to guarantee that they will all, like the wall will be completely covered no matter what, and there won't be any issues with shadows and things like that. At the moment, I wanted to try and see what it would look like to take some of my UV lights. That is a new feature. I haven't played with them before. We used to take a 4-foot UV blacklight tube around with us, but I was always terrified that the tubes were going to get broken, and even though we had protectors on them, we had 2 or 3 layers of protection for the tubes, but fluorescent tubes just aren't known for their durability. So that was something I always wanted to replace, and UV lights have come so far since those days. So these little UV par cans are surprisingly affordable, and they're wired a little bit strange in my opinion. It does allow for some fun little chasing sequences, as you can see. I apologize, I didn't actually realize that the one was pointing so directly at the camera, so that's a little bright. But I'm just trying to, at the moment, adjust the Z4s so that each one is pointing at the mirror ball the way that I want. and then I can lock that in. And every time I set up, I can just do a quick check to make sure that that's still exactly where they need, and then move on. It's a pretty cool little setup. So now they're just playing one of the movements that I had predetermined, and then there they go back to the mirror ball when I push the control, and they're totally RGB controllable now. This actually worked out much better than I had originally planned. They aren't. I would like them to be a little bit brighter, but they aren't bad by any means. I think when we get this in a normal sized gym or room that we would normally be doing something in, I think they'll actually end up being plenty bright for what we're wanting. Since Emily's out here playing with the colors and programs and stuff, I figured I would get a little bit more of a sense of what the whole system is going to be like. So we figured we'd break out some of the freedom sticks. And this one was misbehaving a little bit, so I'm just checking to make sure the channel didn't get mixed up. Trying to combine messed up and mixed up there, and it didn't work. I think there's one of the aspects of the lighting show program, Show Express, where you can control pixels, and I've been having issues with some of the lights that misbehave like that, because I've programmed everything. As soon as I knew what I was going to be buying, I started playing with it and programming it in the 3D view so that I could at least get a feel for some of the programs, how they're going to look. And you can see now it's not misbehaving, and this is a different type of program called a generator program instead of the pixel program. And so I need to go through and change. There's got to be a pair of pixel assignments that are talking to each other incorrectly. But we're just going through and playing with some of them to get a feel for it. This particular mirror ball motor is one that's DMX controllable. It's also from American DJ. And being able to choose which direction it's going and how fast it goes is pretty awesome. It's fun to play with. And then again, here's just some random movements. I think what I'll have to do is give you some non-sped up footage, because it's kind of crazy at 10x watching those. But at this point I'm gonna break things down and put the freedom sticks away and put the freedom pars away. That's what was up in the rafters to give light to the ceiling. And Emily's gone in, and so what I need to do now is just double check that in the 3D window the settings are all the same, and that way I can continue programming without having to actually have everything set up and hooked up, and I'll know that what I'm seeing is a fair enough representation that I don't have to worry about it. So I'm resetting the alignment because these were set up differently with the when they were on the individual trees with the color rails. So I have to change the alignment and then figure out which direction, which axis they have to be turned so that they match. And I think what I'll do is we're going to pause this here, and we'll show you some real-time footage of the actual tree, since adjusting that is going to be a little bit on the boring side. So this goes back to where I was setting up the freedom bars, which is kind of an interesting thing to show how quickly these can be set up. But it's also a fun point because I wanted to show the difference in some of the pixel programs that are available that aren't available in the generator programs. So right now there's a smooth flowing generator sequence for the up lights, which is why only the ceiling lights are on, and then a different one that we had running for the Z4s. And I asked Emily to turn on one of the programs that is made for the all RGBs, and so she is working on getting that changed. And then there we go. So this particular program is actually a fun one, although it isn't going to apply to all environments because the lights are not always on. If you actually looked at the program that it's made from, this is actually a fractal. It's an RGB fractal program that they took images of the fractal working through the full rainbow from red to green to blue back to red, and it's laid out over a top view of the room, and each RGB capable light has its own assignment in that top down room. So it really changes how things are looking, but it can be a little bit on the hectic side. So we ended up changing that to one of the rainbow programs that I have that's generator based, so it still allows me to control all of them, but it's more of a flowing or stepped sequence between from light to light, from RGB capable section to RGB capable section. And as you can, if you look at the spots that the Z4s are throwing out, when they're close enough, like on the ceiling and on the wall behind the mirror ball, if you're close enough, you can see the individual red, green, and blue colors as the little individual spots. But if you look on the right side, where they're hitting the wall, that's what I was saying earlier, is they get so blended together that there's no point having them individually changed. And so now this is where I was trying to figure out what's going on with the one signal that I'm going to have to figure out. This is another pixel-based program. One of the advantages that the the generator sequences have is that I can actually assign the button that turns it on and off in the program. I can assign that to have a speed fader control, which is pretty awesome. So if I feel like on the fly that it doesn't really fit the mood of the room that I want, or the song or whatever, I can speed it up so that it's changing faster, or slow it down so that it's changing much more slow. And that's a pretty cool feature, where the pixel program gives you a far more granular control over what each individual dot in the overall sequence is doing. It's much more difficult to use because you actually have to create an animated GIF, and that controls the entire sequence based on each step of that animated GIF. And so it's kind of cool, because you could do any animated GIF you want, and I could take a bunch of photos of the forest, for instance, and create an animated GIF Wow, I apologize. I'm really struggling talking today. um, but you could make, whatever you wanted. You could have a picture of your cat dancing, and that could be the ultimate animated GIF. And each assigned pixel would be, you know, reflective of whatever it is in location on that particular GIF file. So it can be pretty cool, but like this is, now you see the Freedom Sticks. This is one of the uplight programs that I have for specific to them. And then there's a different one that's, just different sparkle, different settings, different organization of how they're connected together. But anyway, that's where we'll end for today. Thank you as always for watching. God bless you and yours, and stay safe out there.